Welcome to Groundswell's panel on flooding. Groundswell is a grassroots organization of Charleston homeowners whose properties have been repeatedly flood damaged in recent years. We have no political alliance. When we formed 18 months ago, flooding was rarely discussed in the public square. Today, it is said to be the priority concern. It is a crisis which our panel members are working to address. We are grateful that they are here to explain where things now stand and what we can soon expect. Mark Wilbert, Charleston's Resiliency Officer, Chief Resiliency Officer, will talk about the city's efforts and will moderate. And after the presentations, there'll be plenty of time for questions. I want to express special thanks to Larry Monteith, who has volunteered to videotape this program for people who could not be here. And he will post it on YouTube so you can see it again. And to Groundswell Steering Committee for their continued dedication and hard work. If you have not yet joined Groundswell and would like to, please give us your name and contact information at the back table. Thank you for being here.
Is that me now, Susan?
It's you,
Thank
Mark,
you.
you're on.
All right, thank you, Susan. And thank you for all that you're doing. Great job getting everybody here tonight, and thank you all very much for coming. We really cherish this opportunity to get out and tell the story of what we're doing. So the first thing I have to say is if you really want to know what we're doing, read this, okay? I can't tell you, and we're going to use this tonight to do the presentation, but if you haven't read this, you got to read this if you want to know what we're doing. And
what is that?
This is the City of Charleston Flooding and Sea Level Rise Strategy. Okay, it's out and it's about, and we're going to take you through it tonight real quick. Online, we're going to show you where you can find it online. One of the things that we've been working really hard on within the city, because we've been hearing a lot of feedback for the last 2 years that the information isn't out there that people want to see. We have worked really, really hard to get all the information available online that you can grab a hold of. In addition, it's inside this document. So that would be my two opening comments is that. The second comment that I would make is that, first of all, I want to welcome Councilman Seekings, who's in the back. Thank you for coming, sir. Strong supporter of the work that we're doing. So we're here tonight to answer, really, in my mind, two questions. What are we doing? I think that's what all of you want to know. But there's another question that we keep getting asked repeatedly, and that is, how does all of this fit together? Okay, how does it all fit together? You read a lot about different efforts that we've got going on. How does it fit? I hope I can answer that tonight because I want to work really hard to do that. But what we have with us tonight is we've got some individual experts who are working on specific projects in the city. And I just want to put all you at ease real quick. This is not the first time we've met each other, okay? And I know there's a lot of thought out there that, does this group know what this group is doing? Does this person know this person? Well, I'm here to tell you, we all know each other very, very well, okay? So I'll start to my left with Dennis Frazier. He's from MUSC, but he's really representing the Charleston Medical District tonight, where they have a lot of effort going on that Dennis is going to share with you. But Dennis went with us to the Netherlands on the trip that we took over there, okay? We didn't just take city folks, we took people around the city, stakeholders who are really working on projects. Next to Dennis is Wesley Wilson. He's from the Army Corps of Engineers. Wes is leading the Army's 3x3 flood protection study that's going on. The lead engineer that works for Wes went with us to the Netherlands, okay? We wanted to make sure that everybody who's working on things in the city had a chance to see what we were seeing. Next is Katie McCain, and I'm really excited about this introduction. For those of you that haven't met Katie, Katie is the new full-time member to our team within the City of Charleston. She's the city's new Director of Sustainability, full-time position. Thank you to the council, thank you to the mayor for making that a full-time position. Katie is committed to looking for new and innovative ways to help individuals and businesses fight flooding on their plot of land, okay, is really where we're at. She's been doing this part-time, really full-time, 2 full-time jobs for a couple of years, but we got her a full-time spot and we're really excited about having her. And then the last person over here that probably all of you know, if you don't at least know his name, and that is Frank NEWHAM. He is the project engineer within the city for the downtown city area, okay? So that's who we have up here tonight. They're all going to speak individually about things that they've done. But they want to stand. They're ready to go, Susan. So what I'm going to do real quick is, as I said at the outset, we have gotten a lot of not so positive feedback over the last 2 years about, does that work, not too positive? Not so positive feedback that we don't have a venue for sharing what we're doing, okay? We made a firm commitment this year that we were going to get everything that we're doing, get it out there so anybody could access it at any time. And believe it or not, we've succeeded. I really got to thank Katie for that. She worked tirelessly for about, 3 weeks? Pretty much nonstop. I get emails from her 1 or 2 in the morning going, how do you like this? Of course, I didn't answer them. But we were, yeah. Oh, God. We just lost the link. There you go. Okay. So, we lost there you go. So real quick, this is on the website. Any of you can access this. It's www.charleston-sc.gov/sea level rise, SLR, okay? And essentially, it's www.charleston-sc.gov/SLR. We'll take you to this page. So we'll go back real quick, and what you'll see is back here on the resilience page, and we have the best website in the city, by the way. We've got all of our projects that we're working on are up here that you can access and find out what's going on with them. As you know, we're pretty involved in the South Carolina Floodwater Commission, and we're working on getting some stuff up there. But it's got the Peninsula Flood Risk Management Study and others on there. But we're going to go over here to the flooding and sea level rise strategy. I'm just going to take you through the high points here. But you can see the check here. You can go on there and get a web viewing if you want to. One that looks really good on the web. You can get one that's printer friendly. That's where this document comes from, so you can print it in your home. And or you can track our progress online here by coming over here. So this is going to walk you a little bit through the document, but I'm only going to highlight some things out of here. So the first thing we did, and this goes to my military background, you can't get anywhere unless you have a vision, mission, set of goals for where you're going. That's the way strategic plans work. The one thing that's been really frustrating for me is I'm used to, once you get this set up, you go in a straight line. This is anything but a straight line, okay? There's a lot of fits and starts up and down, but that's just the way local government is, okay? So that's where we are. But the vision is for the protection of Charleston, providing a guiding framework. That's essentially what this does: protect lives, property, maintain our thriving economy, and improve the quality of life. I want to talk to you real quick about our goals because we put an incredible amount of time into our goals. And I just want to tell you something. Bob Warner just walked in the room. Bob, welcome. Bob's working out in the Church Creek area, for those of you that don't know. We put a lot of time and effort into these because we now have, and I'm not exaggerating, we have the entire city is looking at these and looking at this document. We sat into a meeting the other day working on some new stormwater regs, and this document was on the front of the table. So we're using this. This is happening as we speak. So one is we want to protect our citizens and neighborhoods, our critical city infrastructure, economic vitality, enhance vital resources. I don't know, I can't tell you how important that one was. I just came back from and this one, number 4, really talks about our natural beauty as well, the beautiful things that make Charleston when you look out in the marsh. I just spent 3 days down in Dallas, and I got to tell you, it just makes you want to be back in Charleston. Okay? It just makes you, when you're out in that concrete jungle walking, it just makes you want to come back, and it really makes you committed to trying to protect what we have here in Charleston. And last is enhance collaboration and partner with others. And this is just a small segment of the people we collaborate with on a daily basis, are the folks you see right here. The next thing I want to do, this is what we've learned over the last couple of years doing this. This is really about 5 buckets of work when you talk about protecting a city from flooding and sea level rise. It's about how the city works. One, it's about resources. Everybody knows we're resource constrained. I want to tell you, City Council and the city and the mayor have really put some resources into this. We've got 10 additional positions this year in the budget just focused on flooding and sea level rise. 10. That's a lot of positions in the budget, okay? And that was unanimous. Those votes were unanimous all the way across, okay? Land use, we all know how important land use is. The future of our city, it's about where you build and how you build. We've got a lot to fix from the last 300 years. We really can't make a whole lot of mistakes going forward. But it's important to note that the mistakes that we made 300 years ago, we didn't know what we know today, okay? We can't go back and look back and say, oh, it's terrible. We just didn't know back then. Outreach, that's what we're doing tonight. Infrastructure, Frank's going to talk about that. I'm going to show you some cool stuff about that. And then obviously governance. You hear a lot about how cities work and how governance fits together. There's a lot of good stuff buried in the governance tab. I advise you to take a look at that. It's the community rating system. How do we help lower NFIP rates for everybody in the city? How do we look at our stormwater rates to make sure that we're doing the best that we can in our stormwater rates? Again, this is not a straight line. It's up and down. It's going to go in different areas, but at the end of the day, I think we're going to get there. I want to walk you real quick to something that I think you're probably not going to believe, but we put everything that we're doing online in what we call our initiatives, and hopefully it's going to come up. It's got to connect over the Wi-Fi. We've got about 67 initiatives that the city's working on, and we're putting it up here live for you to see, and we are going, or maybe not today, sorry. Oh, it is? Okay. Here? There you go. There you go. Okay, thank you. That's why we have Katie. She keeps it going. So this is live, all right? So this lists all 67 initiatives that we've got going on in those 5 areas. And as we change these to different colors, from green to orange or whatever, to red, these are going to change. And we actually have our first meeting next Tuesday with the entire city staff to go through these again for 2 hours. To sit down and go through these. So I really encourage you to take the time, if you're interested, to read this and look at the things that we've got going on. There's a lot of green up there. There's a lot of yellow, and there's some red. But remember, these are just a couple of years old. And so we are working on these as you speak, and it's just a matter of building the capacity to get on these. But these are things that we actively are working on. These are in the budget. You'll see a lot of this stuff reflected in the budget. All those new positions were on this in 2015, and we've already succeeded in getting them in 2018. So that's a sign of an organization that's moving ahead. Real quick, I'm going to let Katie take you through this here. So everybody's interested in infrastructure and how our infrastructure is working and how it fits together. Katie has put, with help some other folks, and I'm going to let Katie walk you through this. This is our current drainage projects. I know everybody's really interested in these. Katie, why don't you walk me through this here?
Sure, thanks, Mark. So a lot of people have been asking, what are all the infrastructure projects we're working on? So we were able to compile them into a story map that shows you all of them. So you can see there's many happening all over the city. And here's a list that kind of goes through them all. And if you go through them individually, you can actually see an estimated cost for the projects, a little bit about them, and then it links you to more information. It'll link you to the Stormwater Department pages, which actually have all the detailed information about the project. So this is sort of a quick overview highlight of each, not only drainage projects, but infrastructure projects that are flood protection. So you'll see battery seawall along here and things like that. So this is a new resource that we can use to share this information. And we have it embedded in the Sea Level Rise Strategy online piece. And one of the really big advantages, it's great if you want to look at the document, but one of the really big advantages of viewing it online is that all the links for more information are complete. So the Sea Level Rise Strategy gives you really high level information on each project, and now you're able to click and see, oh, here's the report on the low battery where we talked about design considerations for the wall. So it takes you to a lot more information. Let's see. So there's a chapter in here for each critical component. You all can go through this on your own, and then it kind of talks about the the past events and how the original strategy sort of relates. So that, is there anything else on the Seal of the Rise you wanted to touch on?
Two things I want to do. Okay. Wasn't that great work that Katie did? She put that all together. That was super. And thanks to Frank and everybody else on the team who are busy putting their things. But two things that I skipped over that I wanted to cover real quick. One, we made a promise to the city in the 2015. If you go back and read the 2015 plan, we made a promise to the city that we were going to put science first and we were going to use science. We used the National Climate Assessment, the third one, when we put together the 2015 plan. As you know, the 2018 Climate Assessment, NCA 4, came out just before we went to publication. We got with the scientist, one of the scientists who works right here in Charleston that wrote it. He came down to the city, we sat down through him, we wanted to make sure that we got these right, okay? Because these are the things that the city's using for planning. When Frank talks about a seawall, 2.5 to 3.5 feet, where's it come from? Look at the 2015 plan. Our stormwater regs, we're talking to them. What are we talking about? 2 to 3 feet. So, we got the observed sea level rise in Charleston Harbor right here, right up through today. It hasn't changed a lot. It's on an upward trajectory. That's no surprise to anybody in this room. What you should take away is that it's accelerating, okay? Here's the good news though, and I can't make any promises on this. Talking to the folks out at USC, it may slow down. It's likely to slow down, okay? This is going to be up and down is the way it's going to go. You can see it. There's an 18-year lunar cycle, all right? There's probably more information than you want to know. There's an 18-year lunar cycle that we're right at the peak of. And at the peak of that lunar cycle, you get the most high tides that you're going to get. So we are probably on the downward slide of that. Let's keep our fingers crossed that the moon works in our advantage, okay? That came from a professor out at USC. Let's hope he's right. The other thing is, we've changed our planning horizon. It was 1.5 to 2.5. We're using the intermediate low. That's we're using NOAA's intermediate, okay? So we took right in the middle. We didn't go extreme right. We didn't go extreme left. We didn't go out to some outside group and try to pull information in to make a case. We said we're going to go with government science. We're going to go with NOAA, the U.S. government scientist. And so we chose 2 to 3 feet for our planning horizon, just as we did back in 2015. We updated it to 2070. We take a 50-year lookout. 30 years is a consideration, we think, for non-critical infrastructure. We think we at least got to look out 30 years. Somebody buying a house today should know that somebody's looking out for that 30-year mortgage, okay? And that comes from personal experience, trudging through the flood, talking to homeowners who just bought a home. The second thing is, and this all ties together, this is the minor coastal flooding. Now, the new administration has changed the what we used to call nuisance flooding, sunny day flooding. They wrapped it all together. It's now called minor coastal flooding. But if you'll notice, we're tracking again right in the intermediate scenario. So it kind of all fits together. Intermediate, that's where we're in Charleston. It could go up, it could go down. Let's, at least we're following the science, and right now we're tracking on the intermediate, okay? And the last thing, just to drive this point home, and you'll see this better in the document, this is a timeline of the top 15 crests at Charleston Harbor. You can't see this very well, but you know what's over here? In the last 4 years, Charleston's experienced 8 of the top 15 tides ever recorded at the Charleston tide gauge. Okay, 8 of the top 15 have been in the last 4 years. You all know that, you're living that, okay? This is coming on fast, and we just wanted to highlight it and say, yep, we've got it. Okay, and with that, what I want to do just very quickly is just answer the second question. So I wanted to tell you what we're doing. Now what I'd like to do is just very quickly show you this business. People are going, what are you doing? How come you're doing it? How come you've got all these studies going on? Well, the first thing you probably hear is this vulnerability assessment. It's going to kick off next week. That vulnerability assessment probably should have been done about 200 years ago, okay? It would have been really helpful. We didn't do it 200 years ago, so we're doing it now, all right? It's what you got to do. It's what good people do when you're doing good planning. That's going to tell us what our risk is. It's going to define the risk throughout the city. It's an entire city look. It's multi-hazard look. And what you want to do is you want to start with your risk. What is your risk? Everything else after that that we're working on is about how do you get rid of your risk? How do you put adaptation strategies against your risk? But you got to start with your risk. I highlight the Army Corps study because that's just one, but it's one solution for one risk for one geographic area. We have an entire city with many risks, with many different threats in a larger geographic area. That's the challenge ahead of us. That's why you got to start with this. And the same with the Dutch dialogues. A lot of questions on the Dutch dialogues, kind of the same thing. We're going to look at 4 problem areas. I'm going to walk through this real quick. I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time here. Again, on the vulnerability and risk assessment, we started this month. Actually, Monday we kick it off. Multi-hazard threats, we get our vulnerabilities. Everybody understands consequences times probability equals your risk. And then you always overlay social and economic vulnerabilities. Then you start applying adaptive solutions. The idea here is you want to balance out the cost and quality of life. You can't fix everything at one time. You'll destroy the quality of life. What you got, and plus you couldn't afford it. So what you got to do is kind of pick where you start and work your way down from there. Again, Army Corps of Engineers, I'm going to let Wes talk about that. It's one threat, one geographic area, and there'll be multiple actions that we can take. Just one threat, and I'll let Wes talk about that. Dutch dialogues. What are the Dutch doing here? Everyone wants to know, why are the Dutch coming? They have unique ways of providing adaptive action to threats and risks. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. This is what they do. Okay, they made a commitment after a major flood over in the Netherlands that they would never have another person die of a flood again, and they've been at it. The big challenge is they have their government starts it. The king decides this is what we're going to do, and everybody just falls in line. And that was very, very apparent to us on our travels over there. We chose 4 project areas to take a look at. The Peninsula, we're calling it the Lockwood Corridor. It's kind of the hospital district all the way around to the Battery, and then up around Burbank Park. Bardell's Creek, which is over on the east side, I think the Cooper River Bridge area, but just expanded a little bit. Johns Island and Church Creek. Why do we choose those 4 areas? Because there's 4 unique geographic areas. If we can get some ideas from those 4 areas, we can replicate those in other places throughout the city. This wasn't just done hodgepodgey. We put a lot of thought into this. We may change them after our first get-together. We may change these 4 areas. And the last one is Church Creek. Church Creek is a really unique area. We've done a lot of work out there, but we just want to have these guys come in, perhaps take another look, see what the Dutch may do. And again, Bob Warner just walked in. Bob's done a ton of work out there. Bob, how much time did you spend with the Dutch folks when they were here? A lot of time, okay? We are, I'm telling you, we're connected. People don't think we're connected. Like, are they talking to each other? We're not only talking to each other, we're working together, spending time in a truck, driving around together. We're really trying to put people together. So May 1st and 2nd, we have our colloquium set up that we're going to put the 4 teams together. That's going to be teams from Charleston folks in the Netherlands, folks from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. They're going to work for 2 days preparing for the workshop, gathering data, study, research, and explore. The workshop is going to happen the week of July 15th right now. And then the last day is going to be a day of presentations. We're going to invite the community in to come in and see what they came up with. The idea of deliverables here are going to be 4 project concepts with a lot of design. Dutch start with design. They start with design. They take what the challenges are, they design for the challenges. Okay, it's a little bit different way of thinking the way we do it in this country, where we think we got a vacant piece of land, and we think how much can we fit on that land, and what's the cost benefit stuff, and then we try to engineer on the backside of that. They do it a little different. They start with the challenges in mind. We saw that over there in the Netherlands. But again, they have a different governing structure than we do. And so hopefully we'll get those 4 project concepts. Those would be great if we wanted to go ahead and try to do some other stuff. It's important to note, though, that we have all of these other projects ongoing, all of these other studies. They're all focused on the same thing. How do we get, when we get our risk, apply solutions to it, go to the market, go to the government, and try to find funding? And that's kind of my last slide here is path to financial assistance. It's really hard for a city of our size to pay for all the things. Again, we're playing catch up after a couple hundred years. You got to know your problems and your risks. You gotta have a project that makes a difference. The Army Corps project probably lays this out the best, and I'm excited for Wes to share it with you. You gotta know what your scope and budget is. No one's gonna give you money if you don't know what your scope and budget is, they're just not. You gotta have preliminary engineering at a minimum. You gotta know what the benefits and the consequences are, okay? Particularly if you're talking to private investors. What are the benefits? What are the consequences? What's your scope? What's your budget? And then the last thing is, how does it fit into a larger plan? Okay? That's particularly on the federal government side. They want to know, how does it fit into the larger plan? So that's why we're doing what we're doing. If anybody's wondering, and I know a number of people are, maybe no one in this crowd, but I certainly am getting enough hate mail to know that there's people out there wondering about that. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I think we said Dennis is going to go first. So let me find Dennis's thing here. Is this you, Charles? Yeah, this is you, Dennis, right? There you go. You want to do it? You want me to do it? Yes. There we go.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you tonight. And I'm going to talk about the medical district. I want to also say Christine McCollins is back there, MUSC Resilience, Chief Resilience. So is anyone from Roper or VA here by chance? I work with Ken Hill and Rick Mann a lot, and of course Greg Weigel at MUSC. I'm going to be talking about the Greenway.
There you go.
Yeah. And I think it's important because we began this process in about 2014. Dr. Cole asked that if I would try to get the other medical centers to work together in things that matter to us as a group. Maybe they were regulatory, maybe they were height setbacks, but also could we find more public space? Could we create a better environment for people to walk around and get around the area? And what grew out of that was in 2015, three very long meetings, 3 meetings, 2 days each, where we worked with the city and the county and even the neighborhoods. And so what that's just further showing what Mark was talking about, that in the medical district we've been working together for a long time. When we get into this project and working with the Dutch Dialogue as well as the Corps and the city, the first things they came to us to say was, what's the key issues for you? I'm not going to talk about the specifics of what we do underground to get water away, because the city and the Corps and others will do that. What I'm going to talk about is what we need so that we can continue to deliver quality health care, safe health care for everyone. So, first of all, we need people to be able to get to the medical district, to the VA hospital, to Roper, to us. That's off of the many roads. It could be the interstate or across town, or it could be coming from James Island, wherever they're coming from. And of course, once they get there, they have to be able to get back and forth, not only between our own buildings within each medical center, but there are times when we have to get across to each other. And then we have to be able to continue to deliver that care, whether it's high water or a hurricane or whatever, ice storms. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can cause us to have challenges. And so I'm going to talk about how we've dealt with it a little bit in the short term. The long-term solutions are coming, we're working on within the medical district, but also with the Dutch Dialogue and the other projects. And the things that we need to do, and we have been doing, is one is we raise structures above flood level. Now the hospitals, in the case of actually the Tower, and the Children's Hospital, and many of the other buildings at Roper and the VA as well, when they build them, we get a lot, when we do build them, we're able to get them up as high as we can. But we still have some buildings that aren't as high as because they're built years and years ago. So we're looking for ways to have connections that are above ground. And there are a lot of elevated walkways between buildings, but we need some more. And some of my graphics will show that. From the Dutch Dialogue and from working with this group for well over a year now, we know that we need to continue to store water. We do have retention ponds when you build facilities, but really we need to do more than that. We need to be able to drain areas to create other areas that are dry for more ability to move vehicles and walk across. And we're going to do that by storing it probably in cisterns or some other type of feature. And then we're talking about the concept of moving that water. As you know, the Spring Fishburne project is well underway, and it will continue to improve, and over the years we'll gain the benefits of that. The Calhoun West project will do the same thing because the medical district kind of touches both those areas. But then we're also in a conceptual way looking at Long Lake is could it become a collection vessel of some type. We all know about the impact of flooding. Happens to be flooding in the medical district. I'm sure you see it in other parts of the city as well, but we deal with it. We have vehicles that can drive through high water if they need to. A lot of times the flooding isn't necessarily waist deep, although I do have pictures, I didn't show them here, but sometimes it's just that the typical person coming to the medical center's car can't get through it. Maybe our ambulances can, but maybe your cars can't. So we have to be able to do that. This is a picture of an energy plant that one of the projects I did when I was overseeing that part of the medical university's work of the planning and capital planning. And we built it, it was after Hurricane Sandy, and we built it up high enough so that all of those facilities, and this happens to be MUSCs, could be with heating and air conditioning and have steam, because steam is so critical, not only heating, but also for sterilization and other types of services that you need. And Roper and the VA are doing the very same thing. If you drive over there, you'll see they have projects completed and underway doing the same thing. This is the medical district, that black outline. It is generally Lockwood up to Rutledge approximately, and across town over towards Calhoun, but the Long Lake is in it. And we work together. We've been working on, I'm going to show you a little bit about the Greenway, which is more of a public amenity, but we also work together on other issues and get with the city, and the city is a partner in that as well. We do that. The Greenway began as a public amenity, and one of the things that's interesting, after we went to the Netherlands, we found that when they did public service projects to improve flooding, every time they could, they tried to give the community back something to benefit. It might be a park, it might be a better place to walk or ride, or something extra. And so in 2014, we began to look as a group at could we close Dowdy Street, and that's Dowdy Street. And in November of 2017, we were able to close the street. This is actually, I'll go on to that later, and then I'll go through the minute. This is concept actually into the future, but what we hope to do is to continue to work to close that street, to to put in more park-like plantings and such. But look to the right there, that's an elevated connector that can cross all the way from the MUSC library side to Clyburn Plaza, comes past Roper. It could connect into Roper to the left there, that's the Roper Medical Office Building. Ashley River Tower straight ahead, and then just behind it is the VA. It's possible in the future that all these things could be connected.
Can you talk a little bit louder into the microphone?
Okay,
I
sorry.
can't hear you.
It's possible in the future that these connections could be connected to all the three medical centers. This is the Dowdy Street from President to Earhart today. We wanted to do it very quickly. In New York, they did something called tactical urbanism, where you just go in and capture a street very quickly, and so that you can give it to the people to use, not wait for a long time to build something. There's more than, I think they estimate, well over 20,000 people in just a few blocks of this area that work at Roper, MUSC, and the VA, patients, everybody, and visitors. And not only that, the people who are on the other side of Calhoun, perhaps, and the people at West Edge are going to be going back and forth. So this becomes another central point for the city, where it becomes a nice park-like area. In the interim, we have some flooding there from time to time. We're doing things such as build places where people can go relax and rest, and also get it up a little bit up out of the water. This is obviously not high enough for big, deep water, but it's good for immediately. And then there's a lot of events that are going on there weekly, and we're in the process of adding to that. We're planning to add food venues, and an interesting thing here is these are, we call them kiosks, but there are containers that they're not in yet, but they'll be converted. But those are actually able to be moved. You could actually pick them up and move them, so they are, in a sense, designed for water conditions, and if we ever decide we can raise that area some, we could pick them up. Just go through that, just we serve there. Back to the original drawing, let's see, what's the last? We're adding we find with so many people coming and going that there are a lot of people that want to get into the park area, but there are a lot of people who need to go quickly. So we're adding wider sidewalks to connect. And these are concepts that we are looking at as we go into the Dutch dialogue. It doesn't mean we're going to build them, but what it shows is for the top left there is a method there where we could maybe collect water in some way and store it and pump it out later, perhaps to Long Lake, perhaps in other ways. The Spring Fishburne project has a drop that's going to be nearby, and it's possible in years to come when that's completed, it will also pick up some of this excess water. And then we show an elevated walkway that can transverse across between the buildings. The one on the right there is just a map that shows how you could plan ahead to collect water the way you might transport it over to Long Lake, along those streets and over to Long Lake. And then the bottom left shows Long Lake could be a public amenity that's very nice. Right now it's not really up to the Colonial Lake type standards, but it could be a place where people could go for a walk around it. It could sail or row a boat or something. So it'd be a very nice amenity that we'd like to work with the city on. And that completes my presentation.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. We're going to have time for questions and stuff a little later on. Now I'd like to ask Wes to come on up and talk about the Army Corps of Engineers project.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Susan, for including us in this conversation tonight. We love the opportunity to tell our story. Real quick, I don't think so, but anybody from the Army Corps here tonight? I gave the audience, so I'm all by myself, so you're easy on me. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, Mark Wilbert, City of Charleston, they are our project partner, our non-federal sponsor, as I may refer to it in the presentation a few times. And I think it's
Trying to get this up. It's giving me a hard time. I'll get it up.
Get on your Explorer.
This. That's not you. I can kill that. This is you, right? Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right.
It's a PDF.
Let's see, where is it? That's it right there? Sorry, I'm the wrong one, folks. Page up. There you go.
All right.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. So, study purpose, the Charleston Peninsula Coastal Flood Risk Management Study. A lot of words. That's what we do in the government, right? So, two key words in this study purpose, and I'm going to get back to what Mark said earlier. One purpose, right? Coastal. If you guys remember anything from what the Corps is doing today, it's coastal and risk reduction. Coastal. We are studying one event, storm surge. This project was funded as a result of a storm event, Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Matthew, whatever 10,000 hurricanes we've had in the past 4 years. So coastal is the key word here. Another one, investigating potential solutions to address risk. Risk is the other key word. We are reducing the risk to property, populations, and infrastructure. Sit it down. All right, and then this is our, sorry it's PDF, it's hard to see, but the Charleston footprint. So with the Peninsula footprint, obviously we're on it tonight. I want everybody to focus on that red line that goes around the peninsula. That is our study footprint essentially. The interior of the peninsula does not see storm surge like the area where the red line is. So that's essentially what we're studying. And we go all the way up to the North Charleston boundary. All right, we have a process. This is called a 3x3 Army Corps of Engineers study. We are essentially at this alternatives milestone here. We completed that in December 2018. We got kicked off in October 2018 by signing the partnership agreement with the City of Charleston. Our commander and Mayor Tecklenburg both signed that agreement. If I was to draw a dotted line, we'd be somewhere in the middle of this less than 9 months. We're in the evaluation and analysis phase. We are very engineering dependent right now. Actually, we harass the city for data information, GIS shapefiles, soils data, On a weekly basis.
Daily basis.
Daily, sorry. So I know they're tired of when my email pops up on the bottom right-hand corner. They probably go, oh, not again. But they are great partners, and they are very timely in getting this information, and it's all huge when we go ahead and start doing our engineering modeling, and I'll get to that in a second. Next, tentatively selected plan. That is when we present a plan to our higher headquarters to say we've done the engineering analysis, and this plan is going to provide the maximum benefits to the peninsula. And I'll get into what kind of measures are we looking at. How are we going to get there? This is a 3-year study. So if we kicked it off in October 2018, we'll be done, Chief's report signed in October 2021. We're not doing analysis for 3 years. We're doing analysis for 18 months. The other 18 months is reviews, and reviews. So with that being said, I mean, we're heavy into the analysis. This is the fun part. But once we get to the tentatively selected plan and agency decision milestone, that'll lead into more of the review phase of the project. Okay, next one. All right, a little bit more information on the study schedule. Tentatively selected plan, January 2020. We are going to release the draft report to the public and agency for review in April of 2020. That'll give everybody the opportunity to comment and review it. And then from there, we take speaking of reviews, we go from April 2020 to June 2021 to submit a final report, just because of the number of reviews that we have. October 2021, that's the assigned chief's report. Very important here, after the study is complete, if a federal project is recommended by the Corps of Engineers, it needs to be authorized and appropriated by Congress. Those are two key things that have to happen before we go into design and construction.
Next page.
Yep. Okay. So what are we looking at? Structural solutions. We're also going to be looking at non-structural solutions. Walls and floodgates. Remember, we're thinking of the perimeter of the peninsula. We're not doing anything in the interior. Walls and floodgates, berms, tide gates, breakwater. We are going to look at putting a breakwater at the tip of the peninsula to reduce wave damage from a storm surge. Living shorelines and marsh enhancements. I know how important marsh is to everyone here. Obviously, it's important to us. So we want to, any plan that we implement, we want to make sure we maintain the existing marsh along the Ashley and the Cooper. Okay. This slide is a little scary, but at the end of the day, it has to be part of our plan. Elevating structures, I know you guys are doing that right now. Relocating structures, probably not going to have too many homes along the Battery we're going to pick up and move. And acquisitions, it's going to be much cheaper to build a wall than it is to buy a home on the peninsula. So at the end of the day, we'll have probably small areas of non-structural solutions, but with the cost of housing down here, it's just much easier to do a hard structure. So we do the 3 E's of analysis. We do an economic analysis, an engineering analysis, and an environmental analysis. They're all very important, but they all feed into the economic analysis. The goal of the project is to have a very high benefit-cost ratio. The higher the benefit-cost ratio, the more likelihood of you guys getting federal funding to construct a project. So, right, what are we doing? We start with inventory data collections. This is where we go back to the city and we want all first floor elevations. Next, we take that information and we calculate our future with projects and we compare it to our future without project. And then finally, we come up and we select the NED plan, the National Economic Development Plan, which is the same as our tentatively selected plan. And that National Economic Development Plan is our plan with the highest benefit-cost ratio. And then we do the engineering analysis. We concurrently inventory data collections, asking the city for all their soils data and all their, what do we ask for today?
Outfall location.
Outfall locations. So we are communicating on a daily basis. We take that information, we load it into our engineering models, and it spits out some quantities. We take the quantities, we develop cost estimates, feed the cost estimates to to the economics team. And following from there, we finalized our net plan and we tightened up our engineering analysis. And then last slide, obviously, one of the most important is the environmental considerations. We all follow the NEPA Compliance Act. We want to make sure we don't impact or minimize impacts to historical and cultural resources. We adhere to all of the laws and regulations, and we have almost quarterly interagency coordination meetings with all of our federal and state partners. So with that, those are the 3 E's. That's all I have, and we'll be around later for questions.
All right, thank you, Wes, thank you very much. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and put this up on our website too. If you go to the Army Corps project page, we'll have a link there so that you can get to that as well. All right, let's see if we can get, Frank is up next. Let me just get over here. Hold on, screw this up. No pressure, right? There we go, look at that, Mark. All right, Frank, it's you.
I'm Frank NEWHAM. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm the project manager on a couple of big projects in the Peninsula area, and also some day-to-day projects that you may be familiar with. So start off with, this is probably the biggest project we're working on in Peninsula by far. This is the Calhoun West Basin. Goes all the way up to St. Philip Morris Street. There's a shaft there. It goes through a deep tunnel system all the way down to the Coast Guard station, where we'll have a pump to pump water out. This area in blue is about 800 acres, 850 maybe. All these are tunnel locations that will connect to the pump station at this location. We start here at Morris St. Philip, Cannon Park, down to the Coast Guard station. This is Wilson B. Fane to the Coast Guard station. Next one. So these are the contributing areas that go to drop shafts. We have 2 types of shafts on the project. We have the big access shafts that are 30-foot in diameter, where the tunnel bored machine goes in and out, and also for maintenance. We have drop shafts located all through these drainage basins, where surface collection goes to the drop shaft and then down into the tunnel. So eventually all the infrastructure, or most of the infrastructure in this area, will be replaced and routed to the drop shafts. So you basically have a system that's capable of pumping water no matter what the tide is. This pump station would be sized for about 1 million gallons per minute. It's huge. Here we are, this is where we are with Calhoun West now, and I'm trying to get through this fairly fast so we won't keep y'all all night. The report is due by the end of March, so we're real close to getting the first report. It's going to have the analysis of existing conditions, hydraulic and hydrological model of the existing road systems. We'll identify short and long-term goals. We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket with just the tunnel and the pump. We want to look at things that can help you now. Things that we can put in place that within 1 to 5 years can have an effect. We look at maintenance priorities. What are the main places we need to concentrate on for maintenance? And then any kind of property acquisition, trying to find out where we need properties for shafts, drop shafts, that type of thing. Part of what we're doing too is working with Dennis and the medical district to put in a shaft that will be connected to the Spring Fishburne shaft up at Cannon Street. This will give them relief for 27 acres directly in the medical district, but indirectly it serves almost the whole medical district. So that's something we're looking at. If everything goes according to plan, that could be online by 2023. So that's a pretty short time frame when you're talking about projects of this size. The other thing we're looking at, we're in the design right now of the Morris St. Philip shaft. This is a shaft location at the very end of the tunnel. You saw it at the very top. That is in one of the worst flooding areas of Calhoun West. And that is an access shaft that's 30-foot in diameter, and it will be put in hopefully in the next couple of years. We have to do that because of the property constraints on the site. And we're negotiating with the Coast Guard to put a pump station in their area down there. So we're we have all this going on at the same time. This is a program that I'm real happy with. Councilman Seekins and I have spent a lot of time out here wading through knee-deep water and trying to figure out where these check valves go. With the increase in sea level, we're having a lot more water intrude into the city system. So what we've done is put check valves in problem areas like Bennett Gadsden, Ashley Avenue, here on Buffane. We've put them at Rutledge. We've put one at Limehouse. We've got one at King and one at Meeting. So we basically closed off the battery to any kind of inundation coming through the wall. We also are trying to block off this water here. If you look at an old map, like 1878 map of Charleston, go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
This is Charleston in the 1870s. See where the check valves are? So that's why we have to check this. This land, when they filled it in, it's water, and as y'all know. So without the check valves, we get 7-foot tides or better. You're going to have water all the way up here at Cumming and St. Philip. So these check valves, I think a lot of y'all have experienced this. They work. We put those in at Water Street and up here at Morrison, and we've eliminated a lot of the flooding that's up there. Can you go back one?
Back one, sure.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that check valves gives us is the ability to clean these pipes. So we've gone in and cleaned Rutledge from Buffane all the way down to the battery. We've cleaned King from Lambeau to the battery. We've cleaned, we're in the process of cleaning Limehouse. So we have cleaned some of the major drains coming out of this part of the peninsula. And we've also looked at putting temporary pumps in, like at Bennett Gadsden, to keep that area from flooding, and other areas in here. We're still experimenting with pumps. You go to, there we go. Please. This is probably our biggest threat is the sea level rise, in my opinion. This graph shows you the blue line is projected tide, the red line is what we're actually getting. And we're seeing this all the time. You have about a 1 foot higher actual tide than projected. And it's getting kind of scary. Here are the king tides. So if you start out with a 7 foot tide, you add a foot to it, a lot of Charleston's underwater. So that's why the check valves are so important. Irma, September 11, 2017, a 10 foot tide. This is what's happening at the battery on a 10 foot tide. The Ashley River and Murray Boulevard are the same elevation. So what we're doing with that is we're looking at replacing the battery. This is another big project. We're looking at replacing 4,800 feet from the Coast Guard station down to the turn. This wall was built in 1909 to 1919. It's in pretty bad shape. This is what it looked like before the battery was built. Here's White Point. Here's the Coast Guard station. All this was in the water. 47 acres was filled in. This is how they built it. Anybody that has a boat dock, this is a wooden platform on wooden piling right here. This is Charleston. This is how far out they were when they built this. And if you have anybody that's got any kind of wooden structure around water, this wasn't meant to last 100 years. So here's where we are now with the battery. We're looking at raising the battery 2.5 feet, having the same kind of posts and rails we have now, a walking surface. This seawall is not in the actual design. We'll have a walkway at ground level, parking, travel lane, median, travel lane, parking, and then the interior space. This is down by the Trad at the Coast Guard station where you have a ramp touching down here, going up to the height. You have stairs going up and some planning opportunities. Here again, your Coast Guard driveway, you're going up the ramp, around, and it's a pretty nice looking setup with the planning opportunities and the landscaping. These are, we call them parklets. These are at the major intersections like Rutledge and Limehouse, Ashley, where you actually bump the wall out a little bit and have seating opportunities. We also have a raised platform here, a tabletop, to slow people down driving down the road. And all the projects I talked about are on our website. The seawall repair, I guess it took off. I gotta get back on there, but seawall repair and the Calhoun West project are on there. And that's it for me. Thank you.
You guys have been busy, really busy. Groundswell started 18 months ago and nobody was talking about flooding. It's 18 months later and it's amazing what's going on. I'd like to invite whoever to start asking questions because this is a terrific opportunity.
My name's Robin Andrews. I'm a 17-year resident, 85-year-old, 17-year resident of Ansonbury. It would be helpful to put this into perspective. If we knew what the market value was of the peninsula, everything inside that red line, what is the value of all the homes, the hospitals, is it 50 billion? 80 billion, that's Starbucks. 900 billion, that's Apple. Are our resources commensurate with the value of what's on the peninsula?
I will just say you got 2 projects underway. Obviously, you heard the Army Corps project is going to have to answer that question. That they have to answer that question in order to get to their tentative selection plan. But also our vulnerability analysis is going to take, there's going to be an economic layer on that as well.
I'd like to ask Mark, when will the public have an opportunity to hear what's going on actually with the Dutch dialogues?
That's a good question. Katie and I were working on that yesterday with the Dutch, and we're trying to find where those opportunities are based on space constraint and what the actual work will be. But once we get that figured out, we're going to put that up on our website. But we actually worked on that yesterday with them.
So there'll be a chance for people who live here to talk to the people who are
There's going to be an
doing the
opportunity, and that's Katie's point, there's going to be an opportunity to submit questions and submit ideas. We may do that online. We're trying to figure that out right now.
Terrific. Next.
Hi there. I have a question that's from
What's your name?
Thomas Summerall. I live West Ashley. I was born here in Charleston. We've talked about sort of a top-down view of everything, and it's very impressive. I've got a bottom-up problem, as it were. My neighborhood is connected to the rest of the city by only one street, and that street floods multiple times a month. It's a pretty small problem. I mean, all of these problems are fractal in nature, and the drainage of any small fix is going to affect something else, just as our problem is affected by the South Windermere Shopping Center that was built without any regard to where the water would go from those parking lots and so forth. But what do I do? What does any citizen do with a very particular, discrete problem like that in order to get it attention from the city? I've had multiple conversations with the mayor, my city councilman. I've talked to you, Frank, and I don't even see a plan for making a plan coming together for this. 100 yards really is all that needs to be addressed of road, and it seems to a layperson that just raising it, a foot or two would probably fix 90% of the many flood events that we have. So how does a citizen basically talk to the city about their problem and get a plan in place and a budget and figure out where the money's going to come from and make it happen?
Right. I'm a project manager with the city. Typically, projects come to me with a scope and a fee associated with them. The best way to get any kind of response is talk to your councilman, talk to the mayor's office. The mayor has mayor's night in, that type of thing. Get in front of them and talk to them. They're the ones that can allocate money to a project. Eventually, they're going to have to prioritize projects because we have them coming in from everywhere. West Ashley, Johns Island, James Island, the Peninsula, Canhoy. We're a big city. We stretch out huge amount of land mass. And the best way to do that is talk to your councilman and,
Check, done it.
and try to get it moving through
Yeah,
that way.
I talked to the councilman, talked to the mayor,
Right.
again, nothing's happening.
Right, because at the staff level, we cannot
Yeah.
assign priorities, projects, we can't assign budgets.
So I should just wait.
That's all I got.
My name is Mary Reynolds. I live on Trad Street. As a segue to this individual asking to have your thought process be distilled down to the individual homeowner versus the region, there's been a lot of talk on my street about raising homes, and several of my neighbors have done so. And the conversation amongst those that are considering raising their homes and have already done so was that there was never one source of information with a boilerplate of if you're going to just go down that road of trying to decide whether to raise your home. And I understand that the AR has been extraordinarily considerate and helpful with homeowners who want to do so. It sounds like each homeowner has to research the steps that one has to go through in order to progress, whether it's first you see an engineer, or first you see your BAR person, or first you see your city council person. And so just as a suggestion, and perhaps for you, that if there was on your website or on some kind of Charleston's website, if you're considering raising your home, here are some of the things that you should do to get the project rolling. And I think that would be really helpful for people who are in Trad and Savage and Council to have a place to start and have a boilerplate so that if they do consider staying versus selling their home, there's some way to help them get the raising of their houses started. And I think that would be a real nice way for your body who's looking at the larger picture to have a vehicle by which to identify and connect with the individual homeowner. So I'd love to see something like that made available to the public.
Yeah, so you're talking about not necessarily design guidelines, because those were recently posted for elevating.
The planning department recently posted information on the website, which is on the resilience page. It links from there about elevation guidelines that the Board of Architectural Review will look for. So those are sort of guidelines for how to elevate how to design that elevation. That sounds like what you're talking about more is before that, before you even consider elevating. What is that process? Who do you call? Okay, great point. We'll get that up there for
I think
you.
it would be helpful for the people who are trying to decide whether they're going to do that.
One of the things that Groundswell asked for and is still asking for, and may come into the new department, is what we call the flood office in City Hall. I think that's what you're sort of looking for. Someplace where you can go knock on the door and say, my problem is, and we're going to.
Flood czar.
A flood czar. Somewhere I've heard that before. So we're going to continue to ask for that because I think it's really important, and it would coordinate with what's online, but you need face time when you have a problem like this.
Or
So
one place to go to get started.
a place to go and a person who can answer the question. I'm coming, Luke.
Yeah, my name's Nigel Cooper, and I live on Murray Boulevard. I've lived there for 20 years. So obviously my major interest is the seawall. So firstly, time frame. I understand that work is going to start at some point. I've heard December. I've heard it's going to be performed in 1,100 foot development stretches. How long each of those stretches takes to develop, I'd love to know that. And how long the overall project is going to take, because obviously if there's one low point in that seawall, it's still open to the ocean, open to the sea. And then secondly, I'd like to know about funding. We know it's a city issue. We know Murray Boulevard, which Mayor Tecklenburg said about a year ago, that we could be faced with a time when Murray Boulevard just falls into the Charleston Harbor. That is it's a state road. I'd like to know how much funding we're getting from the state. And then thirdly, we have a coastal federal Coast Guard station. How much federal money is actually coming into the project?
Lots of questions.
Yes.
I'll start out by saying right now the conceptual plans you saw here have corresponding design plans. We're going through the permitting process right now. There's a lot of permitting with this, as you can imagine. We're going through the Army Corps. OCRM, SCDOT, we're dealing with the Preservation Society. There are a lot of people involved in getting permitting for this project. We feel like we're very close. There was a slowdown. You may have heard about the government slowdown a while back. Just backed up some of the permitting process. We were hoping to get this project, the first phase, which will go from Trad to Ashley Avenue, which is 850 feet or 4,800 feet. We're hoping to get that out for bid by the end of this month, if we get the permits. It will take about a year to 18 months to finish 850 feet. Just because we're having to, Murray Boulevard is really old. It's over 100 years old. It's not constructed properly. The utilities that are in Murray are going to have to be replaced. So we're looking at replacing water, sewer, electrical, any kind of gases in there, along with the road. And it was a DOT road, but the restrictions they put on us were so over the top, the mayor decided to take the road, and we now own Murray Boulevard. Otherwise, we would never get this project going. We would be designing I-26 down there instead of a nice road. So right now, to answer your question about how long it's going to take, we're hoping to get the first phase done in a year to 18 months. That's 850 feet. Then we can start hopscotching down, taking down manageable chunks, because we don't want to inconvenience everybody at one time or shut down any kind of use of the battery unless we're actually working on it. So we're thinking 850 to 1,000 foot chunks as we go down. So you're looking at 5 to 6 years as we go down towards White Point. White Point's a little different. It may not look like the rest of this I showed you, just because there's still some design that needs to go on. But we're not getting money from DOT. We're cost sharing with Charleston Water Systems on some of the relocation work and upgrades. And most of the funding's coming from the accommodations tax. Councilman Seekins, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, we have through the 2019 budget, we have in the bank $27 million for this project, and that will get us a good ways down the road, and we will continue to fund the accommodations tax and stormwater fees.
And let me add, the project story map has the estimated cost, estimated year of completion, and a quick snapshot of all these projects. And then if you can scroll down, if you have a mouse, there's a link that goes straight to Frank's project page with all the more detailed information on phases and timing. So all that information's on the website. A lot of times the project pages kind of get lost because there's so many layers to our website. So we're hoping the story map could really help bring some clarity to that. And the best way to get to the story map is to go to the city's Office of Resilience webpage, which is the city website /resilience. And then right down here, here's the infrastructure project story map. So all that information is up there.
Okay, I'm gonna go up here.
My name is Joseph Watson. The state is 62 America Street. We've been on that corner 61 years. I was born at 27 and a half Amherst. My question first is about check valves. You talked about check valves in a particular area, but my concern is the east side. Have you identified those points so we can address those needs? Light flooding, just high tides that come up in certain areas. We need to know so politically we can move forward to city council and ask to do these minor things so we can accomplish our problems on that. The other question is to the councilman, and he talked about the 27 million. We look at the growth within the King Street, Meeting Street corridor, and that growth and tax value was coming to the city. If you take one building right there on the corner of Spring and Meeting, was built for 18 million, year and a half later, 64 million it was sold for. Look at that tax increase, and if we had 1% or 0.5%, and that growth in that tax, we'll have more than a $27 million coming in that we can do these projects. And remember, above all, our Constitution says we. So what's in your heart, I'm speaking to y'all. I'll never do nothing wrong. I want us to move forward on that and be there and ask for that to take place. I thank you.
I can do some of that. You want to talk about the check valves?
I can address the check valves on the east side if you like. We have put some check valves over there. One of them is at Reed Street on the Porch property. Reed Street has a major line that goes from the Cooper River all the way down Reed to Drake and further back that way. We put a check valve on there. It stopped tidal flooding in that area. Just this week and last week, I've got, I think, 4 vacuum trucks down there cleaning Drake Street up to Blake. And then they're moving around cleaning other lines in that area. We also have put 3 check valves in at Morrison up by the school. Everybody's familiar with that little dip right there. It makes pretty much of a lake. It doesn't do that anymore, except on really high tides. So, and we're going to take care of that, I think, in the next couple of weeks. It's a matter of just extending the berm. But those areas there, that will protect some of the old Cooper Bridge area, the other streets in the vicinity. It also gives us the ability, since the tide's checked, that we can send back trucks there and work for the full day. You're not fighting tides all the time. You're not plugging off lines and pumping water down. You can actually send a back truck, and it's very effective at this point. So we are working in that area. We're trying to identify more places where check valves make sense. When you put a check valve in, it keeps the water from going through the drainage system and up. But if water can come over the top of the shoulder of the road or over the road, you really haven't done anything. So you have to look at a combination of a check valve with some kind of vertical barrier to keep the water from going, and that's what we're looking for.
Yes, and keep me honest here, since we have someone from the Army Corps of Engineers and someone from the City Council. I respectfully want to push back that nobody was talking about flooding 18 months ago. A lot of people have been talking about flooding, and a lot of people who look like me have been talking about flooding for a long time. But they just haven't been heard. One of the first slides on this was talking about the social, economic impact of flooding. Now the city, Charleston, the city has historically and illegally oftentimes had a relationship with Gaston Creek. They would fill it. They were filling the creek, creating a boundary of segregation, oftentimes displacing a lot of people, black people. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we talk about social and economic impacts. There's maybe a permit right now on the desk of the Army Corps of Engineers or from the city to possibly fill that creek. There's not, okay, because I've been reading and I've been pouring through documents and reading, and I was just trying to inquire, keep me honest, about development, about, building some sort of development there, filling the creek, building development, and I'm worried about social and economic impacts of what would happen to the vulnerable people who live in that area, whose places are already flooding at levels. I've walked through it, and several other people have had to walk through it up to the waist. What's the relationship with that to the Harbors and Rivers Act? What's the relationship with that? How does that exacerbate flooding downtown and social and economic impact of black people?
I just want to clarify, when I said 18 months, I meant officially nobody was talking about it. I know that y'all been talking about it 200 years. Can someone answer that about the creek?
Great question. I'm not a core regulator. That's handled in a separate office, but I love the question. We'll be happy to get some more information and pass it along through Susan. But yeah, we'll take that into account. Obviously, OCU, other social economic, that's one of the things we take into account in all of our projects, especially with our federal Peninsula project that we're doing a study on right now. So thank you.
Mike, do you want to address that?
Sure. I mean, first off, I agree with you. We've been talking about flooding for a lot longer than the last 18 months. There's lots to do.
Can you all hear?
When it comes to Gadsden Creek particularly, as you know, that West Edge development has been very controversial. Your council member, James Lewis, who I admire more than probably anybody in the council, has been
voraciously talking about Gadsden Creek and making sure that it does not get filled. There's a suggestion that the West Edge project will be extended. They'll build a berm north of that towards Lockwood Boulevard. That hasn't happened yet, and so we're keeping an eye on Gadsden Creek. That is a combination, a city problem, a county problem, and the Army Corps of Engineers, but we're gonna keep an eye on it, and the social equity of that project is a real issue for all of us, and as you've seen it's come out of the ground, we need to really think about that a lot. So, thank you for bringing it up, and just so you know, James is all over it, all over it.
Thanks, Mike. There was a gentleman in front I promised to bring the mic to.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Rob Wind, live on Halsey Street with a notoriously poor drainage system. And my question is just about the plans for the local feeder systems in West Edge. When there was an attempt to fix our drainage system by putting smaller gauge pipe through the existing drainage pipes, and it was discovered that everything was collapsed. So apparently that's going to be fixed. And so my question is this: I'm sure that there are lots of other places in the city where we have collapsed local storm sewers, and as they're being fixed, and for instance, if ours gets fixed sometime this year, before all the engineering work is done, can it be done in a way that it won't have to be redone when all of the local feeder systems are designed and constructed?
Well, Halsey Street does have collapsed pipe. We did a video inspection of the line out there, and the pipe is collapsed between Gadsden and Ashley. We know that. We're trying to work with DOT to get some contribution from them. Halsey's a DOT road. The pipes under it are DOT. The cost to repair that line right now would be over $400,000. We're trying to get some contribution from them to help us make those repairs. My director and I believe the mayor have been in contact with the DOT district office to see about getting that done. When we repair these lines, that line will have to be dug up and completely replaced. It can't be lined with a liner through it, which we try to do to prevent disruption to community and to improve the conveyance in the line. The liner itself is very thin. It goes into a existing pipe. It actually restructures the pipe. A lot of times the pipes collapse a little bit. It restores the condition of the pipe and actually improves the hydraulic capacity of the pipe. So that's a short-term fix. The long-term fix in these areas that are in with Calhoun West is we will have new surface collection in place that will go to drop shafts and then go to the tunnel. But these kind of repairs now, the lining is a very effective, cost-effective way of replacing the lines. So that's what we're trying to do. I wanted to answer your question.
Well, sure, and does it, long-term, will it have to be redone again when the projects, Calhoun West is completed, or will that?
It may, or it may be able to be tied into the surface collection system. We would have to, we're not looking at that project at that level right now. We're looking at it from a more of a macro level with the tunnel locations, the drop shafts where we need them in the basins. Then we'll look at taking the surface collection to those drop shafts.
Hi, my name is Angela McCluster, and I live on Lockwood Drive. So I wanted to know if there were any plans to build a seawall on Lockwood Drive, because of course when it was Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Matthew, the water just came flooding across Lockwood Drive because there's nothing to stop it or slow it down. And then it goes up Euphane and up Wentworth. So I see that as something that needs some serious attention.
The answer is yes. Right now with Wes's study, that's obviously one of the areas we're looking at. We know for a fact that that's one of the lowest areas in the city. The only area that is lower is Gadsden Creek. And that area floods at 7.1 feet. So Wes will be looking at that. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, thanks, Mark. That's absolutely one of our study areas. If you think about it, so again, everything along the perimeter of the peninsula, obviously Lockwood is just a few feet away from Ashley, so depending on where you are. But yes, that is one of the study areas, and it'll be one of our focal points.
So it'll be a seawall?
We don't know, it'll be a wall or a berm. That's part of the engineering analysis that needs to take place.
My question is this, I went down and watched on the slide, my name, resident.
Carl Carlson. I went down and looked at the flood work. I'm not an engineer, but it doesn't, is a gut only. It seems with all the work and the energy with the wall and the time and effort, 2.5 feet doesn't feel too smart to me. It seems like it ought to be higher. So my question is, how is it smart to do 2.5? I saw the slides that we were not at the extreme, but still I walked down and looked at it, and 2.5 feet with all that energy and effort, why not go another half foot higher, at least be 3?
The wall will be designed to go up. All the infrastructure, the piling underneath, the infrastructure of the walkway will be designed so it can be added to in the future.
Right.
And so we were thinking ahead. We've got a plan in place. Like I said, once the pilings are sized and the big slab on top that carries the load, adding another 2 feet, 3 feet, it's not going to be a problem.
Right.
But right now we've got something I think is aesthetically pleasing. It mimics what's out there right now. If you start going up, you're going to have a Jersey barrier around Charleston. We don't want that.
Hello, my name is Latonia Gamble. I'm the president of the Eastside Neighborhood Association. My question for you is that we have been inundated with a lot of developments. We are seeing streets that not only don't flood, start to flood. And while we appreciate you giving us 2 stop valves for our community, how are you going to monitor these new developments that are impacting our neighborhood and making other streets flood? What is the process that you use to check to make sure that they're not impacting our neighborhood more with flooding? And is there any future plans for the immediate neighborhood that has been suffering so long to get more relief from flooding?
I'm not in the design development review part of the work. I can tell you we have very strict guidelines for design of new subdivisions, especially in areas that are prone to flooding. And those type of concerns are addressed when the plans come through for review. Short answer.
Why don't they work?
And just to add to that, one of the 4 study areas that we picked over in the old Cooper River Bridge area, that was picked to make sure that we paid attention to those neighborhoods and try to bring some innovation, an outside look at those neighborhoods to see what could possibly be done there. That was picked specifically for that reason.
Hello, my name is Maurice Washington, lifelong resident of Charleston. I want to just briefly follow up on the Gaston Creek fill-in. Having lived at Gadsden Green Public Housing, and when tidal flooding came in, seeing all doors on Haggett Avenue swung open, facing Haggett and the West Edge development, and all doors on Haggett at the back entrance swung open, doing tidal flooding, with residents having to sweep tidal water out of the first floor of their apartment units. No infrastructure, real infrastructure, has been put in that particular general area. West Edge is $1 billion development, and there are plans to cap Gaston Creek with concrete, which will exacerbate the problem at that particular site. Now, building a wall around White Point Garden, that's pretty cool, but water tends to travel, and it's going to travel somewhere. And that is a real added potential problem for places like Gadsden Green and the West Edge development and the capping of Gaston Creek. So I understand that you're going to be looking at that or talking to some folks. I would say if you're not already talking to people very aggressively about that project, you're already late to the dance. So you have to re-engage that sooner rather than later. The other point is, what role is planning and zoning playing in your development? Where you dictate to developers where they can build, conditions in which they can, the setback requirements, protection of wetlands and creeks and marshes and the whole gamut that are natural buffers to flooding.
Thank you.
have anybody here from planning to answer your last question, but I think it's a great question. I'll start with that's why land use is one of the 5 categories. What I do want to say though is the Gadsden Green area will be serviced by the Septima Clark project when it finishes. It's not right now, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we've got to get stage 4 finished, and then when we get stage 5 finished, phase 5, it will begin to service at least down the front road, right, President Street of the Gadsden Green project. That's a question I've been asking as well. What we are still unsure of is just how much relief it's going to give up against the wall of where West Edge is, and we're still looking at that. But right to there, there's a major drop shaft right in front of the Gadsden Green that will help that. It's just not all put together yet.
My name is Will Freeman, Ashley Avenue, did my entire adult life in Charleston, native South Carolinian. My question for you is a concern that was brought up to me by people on West Ashley, James Island, Johns Island, downtown, pretty much citywide, is a complaint about that drain or that ditch over there that has been fixed yet, and it's been going on for years. And I'm wondering, and it seems even when a truck does come out, it's very reactive. Are we being proactive with keeping our existing drainage infrastructure up to date? And if not, how can we change it so we are? Because that's something that's going to be very important just to make sure what we have now, since money is a concern for the city, that we're being as efficient as possible.
Great question, but I happen to have, I think, a good answer. So just for the budget, and this goes to, we spend about we collect about $11 million a year just on stormwater operations. So $11 million a year just to do the operations part, which is first and foremost cleaning ditches. Bob Warner, who's sitting right there, my first meeting with Bob, the first thing he taught me was on any drainage system, you make sure that it gets back to working the way it was designed before you start worrying about replacing it or changing it. The city has redoubled its efforts on getting all of the systems that are in place cleaned. Of the 9 additional positions for stormwater this year, that's 2 full new crews for cleaning ditches and getting things back the way they belong. In addition to that, the mayor has charged our public service department, and I believe this might be online as well. We've now got a new GIS tracking system and a new maintenance schedule that they have to follow to get these up. So your question is a great question, your point's a good point, and we are working in that direction. I hope someday you can send me an email and say, I see the difference, okay?
Can I add to that? We also hired a new maintenance project manager. We met with him today. We're trying to systematically go through and clean drainage basins now instead of just reacting to calls. So I think you'll see an improvement that way. We're using our forces along with contractors and doubling up the effort. So we'll go into an area like Limehouse and clean the main stem and all the tributaries and get it all cleaned out, prepared one time. So I think you'll see better tracking and better efficiency in the future.
Hi, my name is Yolinda and I live in Wagner Terrace, lived there all my life. Are there any plans at all to address flooding in the Wagner Terrace area?
We've done extensive pipe rehab work in there right now. We've lined a bunch of pipe and cleaned a bunch of pipe. Some of Wagner Terrace, the pipe is 13 feet in the ground. It's very problematic to clean or replace. We'll have to look at that further. It's not a project on my radar right now, but it's something we will look at. The city's hiring a program manager to go in and look at all the programs, all the projects that are in our list and reprioritize them or come up with a priority system so we can take these things down based on a need, not just whoever yells loudest. So hopefully you'll see some big changes along with this program manager.
Hi, I'm Kate Kennerton. I'm a native Charleston, and thank y'all for all the work that you're doing. It's really making life better than
from your report, and it shows the sea level rise and how we're going back to those maps that y'all showed us from 1870. So I'm trying to figure out your projects and how it's going to change this map and when I'm going to have to move. So how do you connect the projects? You know, can you get a map and say, okay, when you do raise Murray Boulevard, that's going to protect these streets here, and when you do this thing over here, it's going to protect this area. How do we figure that out? Because it's, you know, these are great, and it does show that my house is going to become a blue spot. So I'd like to know how do you just, these are great projects that you have, but how's it going to change these?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll start with, if you think of the project that the Army Corps is doing, if you can keep storm surge out, you're going to keep sea level rise out. And that map that you're looking at is showing sea level rise of probably 2 to 3 feet, I'm guessing.
This one's 3 feet.
3 feet, yeah. So 3 feet is pretty significant change that you see. That's probably going to be 50 or more years out before we actually see that. What we have to do and what we're learning is that we've got to, before we can start building a wall, we have to make sure that we're not going to make the problem worse on the inside. And that's one of the things that the Army Corps is taking a close look at. But really, if you think about how it all comes together, is one, you got to keep the water out, and two, you have to be able to get the water out that is in. Because just as much of a threat that sea level rise is, these extreme precipitation events that have increased by about 40% in the last 20 or so years, that's causing just as much problem when they really get those big downpours and the water can't get out because the tide's high. So it's really a complicated look. There's not an easy, it's like, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. We need to make sure with the Army Corps, but the Army Corps is taking all that into consideration, that we don't make it worse as we go around, but the idea is to keep storm surge out, and then the city is going to have the responsibility that once the water gets in, how do we get it out, and those are the projects that Frank's working on.
I just wanted to let everyone know that after tonight, Mark is also going to be speaking 2 more times that I know of. March 27th from 1 to 2 at MUSC at the Drug Discovery Building, room 110, that's a Wednesday. And Thursday, April 4th at 7 p.m. at the Baruch Auditorium at MUSC, and that is a Sierra Club meeting. So to the outreach point that Mark made earlier, he's coming out and he's going to be there. So anyone you know who did make it tonight, please let them know about these other meetings.
We have about 2 more minutes when we have to vacate the room, so I'll give this to Joe.
Hi, my name is Hugh Garrett, and I've only been in Charleston 2 years. I appreciate your information tonight. I have one question, which I have not, perhaps I've missed it, I haven't heard you mention this. Is there a formalized and ongoing way for you all to get citizen input? In other words, is there a citizens advisory or a steering committee? And if there isn't, why is there not?
Go, Mark.
That's a great question, and I agree that we need to create a way for citizens to get information in. I would say that in the past couple of years, we've just been really busy to get where we are. I checked my phone before I left tonight. I had 77 voicemails on it. My cell phone fills up daily. Trying to stay ahead of that, so we've got to do it in a way that it's organized, that we can take the information and then not just take it and never do anything with it. You're right, we owe you a way to get citizens' input. We got to figure out how we're going to do that. I appreciate that we need to do it, and I can promise you that that's something that's on our next list, but we had to get where we are today to get everybody kind of tied together with all these numerous projects. It's been all day, every day that's kind of working on it. But that's a good point.
I want to thank everybody for coming out. I wish we could keep going, but we'll maybe see Mark and the gang at the next event.
Thank you,
all
everybody.
so very much. I think this is good. So much.
Thank you.
You'll be in touch.
Thanks,
Thank
Susan.
you so
Appreciate it.
much.